Hi, my name is Ville and I'm a game developer from Finland. In April 2024, I started my own indie video game company with the aim of releasing my first commercial release, Solebound, in the fall of the same year. So, what is Solebound? Solebound is a kind of niche project that I started on my free time in the fall of 2022. The idea came from this picture on Twitter, or nowadays some may call it X. Looking at the date, I'm not sure if this is the original post, since I started working on this already in 22, but anyway, it was similar. Now, when I think about it, it was a stupidly overly enthusiastic project for my first commercial release. At first, I thought, yeah, this can be done in a few weeks, but it ended up taking me almost 2 years to complete the project. So, I started thinking, how could I turn this into a game? First, I needed a tool to get the map to the game, of course. I started looking for this kind of solution for Unity because it was the most familiar engine for me. I found a couple ones, but the best at the time was Mapbox Unity SDK. Disclaimer, this SDK is not updated anymore and I don't recommend using it for your future projects. Mapbox had some pretty nice examples that I studied for a long time. I copied the examples and modified them to show the data that I wanted. Eventually, I could create a basic map with the player and test it outside. After getting the map to work, the next step was to add all of the points of interest into the game. Mapbox offered a pretty easy to understand solution, which let me choose the categories of the markers I wanted to show on the map. These included, for example, restaurants, parks, nightlife, shops, etc. I chose to include all of them. I made the points of interest to show up as question marks if you hadn't visited them. If you visited the place, the question mark would disappear and an icon of the category of the place would come on top of the marker. Then a card would open that would show the name of the place and the category of it too. The color of the marker would indicate if you had visited the place or not. Now I still had to come up with the solution to show where the player had moved. At the time I thought the easiest solution would be to make the map dark and highlight it white around the markers that the player had visited. This solution was ditched pretty fast because it looked awful, and it didn't really give the player idea where they had moved if there were no markers around. After that, I came up with the next best solution. The Mapbox map consisted of map tiles. What if I instantiated another tile on top of the Mapbox tile? This would be a simple plane with a fog shader. After the player collided with the tile, the child tile would be removed and the name of the tile would be saved into the player save. Now the player could remove huge tiles all at once while playing the game. This was kind of working, but it looked super rough, so I thought I'm gonna just add a lot of particles for the tile and see how it looks. It was much better, but still not very precise. So after this, I got an artist to work with me on the project. He came up with the idea of saving the player's location continuously and instantiating a sprite mask on the locations the player had visited. This was much more precise, but was super bad for the performance. It also didn't look as good as we thought it would. The artist started to work on this issue and came up with a shader that would turn the vertices of the plane transparent if they were white. We attached this system to the player's collider, so now every time the player collided with the vertices, they turned transparent. We would then save all the vertices into the player save that were visited. This system turned out to work very well. To enhance performance, I created a system that saves the player location continuously every something seconds into the save file. Now, when the game was launched, I used Line Renderer to draw a line between all the locations saved. When the game was closed or some other similar event happened, I just saved a key value pair with a random location and value 0 to the list. When the draw system encountered a value 0, that meant it should cut the line and start another one. I then added a system that will create colliders similar to the positions and size of the lines created. Then I modified the vertex coloring system so that it also takes into account these collider lines. I removed material from the lines so they would appear transparent. I also had to create separate background tracking plugins for both Android and iOS. This basically meant that I had to code native plugins for both platforms, since Unity can't really run in the background of the device. I created separate background location tracking plugins, which you can buy from the Unity Asset Store if you want to use them in your own projects. This was a huge work for me, and it took a couple of months to create these plugins. I had to code the Android plugin with Java in Android Studio and the iOS plugin with Objective-C in Xcode. Yeah, this is what I meant when I said it was a bit overly enthusiastic project. We also had for a while a mission system and added missions for the player. This could be, for example, visit all the statues in the centrum of Helsinki, or visit 5 cafes in this specific area in Berlin. The player would then get a unique medal for their profile for doing a mission. This idea is copied straight from Ingress and it's working pretty well there. We had the system working already, but our issue would be creating the missions. We could not possibly create the missions everywhere by hand. We tried to use AI to create missions, but it was just inaccurate with the location coordinates. Relying for players to create the missions would have been too large job for us, because we would have had to filter them by hand. So we ditched this idea, even though I still think it would have suited the game well. Anyway, we still had a bit of an issue from the game design perspective. This was a cool demo, but it was really nothing like a game. The artist came up with an idea. What if your character was a spirit animal fighting the fog with you? Kinda like the Patronus in Harry Potter. And collecting these different markers would increase the character's stats. For example, going to the library would increase its intelligence, going to the gym would increase its strength, and so on. So we implemented this feature and it turned out pretty cool. Later we changed the spirit animal theme to just regular animals and added 3 different to choose from. I created a system that would reward the player for leveling up these different stats and the general level too. To gamify, I hate that word, our game more, I added a system that would turn your visited area into square meters, or square feet for some weird people who use that system, and show that as your score. I added leaderboards. You could now set your name and compete with other players. I added a social login system with Google and Apple using Unity Cloud and also integrated a cloud save system. I added in-game currency and some items you can buy with it. These were a bomb that clears a large area around you in the game, a range expander that will grow the fog clearing area and your reach for 3 minutes, and an XP booster that will double your XP for opening the markers for 3 minutes. You could get in-game currency by leveling up your character or just buying it with real money in the game. We also wanted a system where you could customize your character, so we added these loot boxes. The basic type of box you can get by leveling up your character, and the premium one you have to buy with in-game currency. Upon opening, they would give you an item that you could dress up for your character. These included hats, shirts and gear. Getting the game into Google Play and App Store was a pretty long process. It took me about a week to get my game accepted on Google Play and 1 week extra on the App Store. The in-app purchases were not working because I had not set my bank account number, and Apple sent the bill back multiple times and I was clueless of why they are not working. The game is now live, and if you got interested, you can download it on Google Play or the App Store. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to follow our journey on indie game development, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. See you next time!